Before these songs became classics, they were cries for help. They were goodbye letters, confessions, apologies. And sometimes, they were the only place these artists felt safe enough to tell the truth. Hip-hop has always been about survival. But behind the platinum plaques, sold-out arenas, and legendary careers were artists carrying grief most people never saw. Some lost parents. Some buried childhood friends. Some battled addiction. Others were fighting demons that no amount of fame could silence.
Somebody watching the act, but I don't know who it is.
The songs you're about to hear aren't simply emotional records. They're chapters from real lives. Stories of trauma, regret, love, depression, loss, and hope. Some predicted the futures of the artists who recorded them. Others helped millions survive their own darkest moments. These are 12 songs that proved hip-hop isn't just music. Sometimes, it's therapy.
Corner, it's fucked up when your mind is playing tricks on you.
Number 12, Ghetto Boys. Mind playing tricks on me 1991. Long before conversations about anxiety, PTSD, and depression became common, one rap group dared to expose something most people were terrified to admit. Fear. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of the police. Fear of your own mind.
That I shot. Was it the one I beat for $5,000? Thought he had.
Released in 1991, Mind Playing Tricks on Me became the Ghetto Boys' biggest crossover hit, reaching the top 25 on the Billboard Hot 100. But chart positions only tell half the story.
About a swall. I take my boys everywhere I go because I'm paranoid.
The real story started years before the song was ever recorded. Scarface wasn't inventing nightmares for dramatic effect. He was remembering them. As a teenager, he struggled with severe depression and survived a suicide attempt. He later spent time in psychiatric care while trying to understand emotions that felt impossible to explain.
Day by day is more.
Back then, hip-hop rewarded toughness. Vulnerability wasn't respected. Mental illness wasn't discussed. If you admitted you were struggling mentally, people questioned your strength. Scarface ignored those unwritten rules. Instead of pretending to be fearless, he rapped about waking up terrified.
I got a little boy to look after, and if I die, then my child will be a bastard.
Constantly looking over his shoulder, sleeping with one eye open, unsure whether the danger around him was real or imagined. The production only deepened that feeling. Built around a haunting Isaac Hayes sample, the instrumental feels like walking through empty streets after midnight, where every shadow looks like someone waiting to attack. Each member tells a different story. Willie D explores lingering trauma. Bushwick Bill describes psychological collapse. Scarface delivers what many now recognize as one of hip-hop's earliest honest portrayals of anxiety and paranoia. Years later, artists like Kendrick Lamar, Kid Cudi, and countless others would openly discuss mental health. But decades earlier, the Ghetto Boys opened that door. They prove strength isn't pretending everything is fine. Sometimes, strength is admitting it isn't.
Wasn't no ordinary nigga. He stood about 6 or 7 feet. Now that's a
Number 11. Scarface. I Seen a Man Die 1994. 3 years later, Scarface returned with another masterpiece. This time, the nightmare wasn't happening inside someone's head. It was happening in the streets. I Seen a Man Die isn't simply a song about violence. It's about consequences. The record follows a man released from prison after serving years behind bars.
His homie Hooten came up, living lavish. Now they dealing with the same stuff.
He's determined to change, to start over, to leave the streets behind. For a brief moment, it feels like redemption might actually be possible. But the streets have long memories. Old enemies still remember. Old habits still exist. And eventually, the past catches up.
Never understood why I could never see a man cry till I seen a man.
He's robbed, shot, left dying. As he lies in a hospital bed, every decision he's ever made begins replaying in his mind. That's what makes this song devastating. Not the gunshots, not the crime, the regret. Scarface had watched versions of this story unfold countless times growing up in Houston. People genuinely trying to rebuild their lives, only to discover that escaping your past isn't nearly as simple as walking away from it. His delivery never sounds theatrical. There's no celebration, no glorification.
Him dying when he dies, let us celebrate. You took his life, but you're
Only sadness. The song asks a painful question that still resonates decades later. What happens when someone finally wants to become a better person, but the world refuses to let them? Hip-hop has never lacked songs about street life. But very few explore what happens after the headlines disappear, after prison, after the mistakes. After the mistakes. I Seen a Man Die forces listeners to confront the human cost of every decision. Because sometimes, the hardest sentence isn't the one handed down by a judge. It's the one carried inside your own conscience.
try. And you can try it till you fight it, but you'll still die. Your spirit's leave.
Before we reach the top 10, take a second to think about this. How many of these songs did you know were inspired by true events? Hip-hop has always hidden incredible stories beneath unforgettable beats. If you're enjoying these deep dives into the culture, not just the music, make sure you subscribe to Flash Rewind, because we've got many more untold stories from rap history coming your way. Now, let's get into a song that still leaves listeners speechless decades after it was released. Number 10. The Notorious B.I.G. Suicidal Thoughts, 1994. Most albums save their biggest anthem for the finale. Ready to Die ended with something entirely different, a goodbye. The track begins quietly. A phone rings. Someone answers.
After crime, from drugs to extortion, I know my mother wish she got him fucking.
Then Christopher Wallace begins speaking. Within seconds, it becomes painfully clear. This isn't an ordinary conversation. It's a suicide call. There are no punchlines, no flashy storytelling, no attempts to soften the emotion. Just one uninterrupted confession from a man who believes he has reached the end.
Believe suicide's on my fucking mind.
Over a haunting, minimalist beat, Biggie strips away every layer of confidence listeners had associated with his image. Instead of portraying himself as untouchable, he sounds exhausted, defeated, lost. The brilliance of Suicidal Thoughts lies in its honesty. Depression rarely announces itself dramatically. More often, it sounds exactly like this. Quiet, hopeless, resigned. Producer Lord Finesse wisely keeps the instrumental restrained, allowing every word to carry the emotional weight. Nothing distracts from the confession.
Glad I'm gone, she know me and her sister had something going on.
Years later, after Biggie's murder in 1997, fans revisited this record, searching for hidden clues. Some viewed it as prophecy. Others heard a man overwhelmed by the enormous pressure surrounding his success. Whatever the interpretation, one fact remains. The pain in his voice feels real.
Had something going on. I reached my peak, I can't speak.
That's why this song continues to unsettle listeners more than 30 years later. Not because it's shocking, because it feels authentic. It reminds us that fame doesn't erase depression. Money doesn't silence anxiety. And even legends can fight battles invisible to everyone around them. Sometimes the loudest voice in hip-hop is hiding the quietest pain. Number 9. Bone Thugs and Harmony. The Crossroads, 1996. Some songs dominate the charts. Others define an era, but only a handful become part of people's most emotional memories. But Crossroads is one of those rare songs. For millions of listeners, it wasn't just another hip-hop hit. It became the song played when words weren't enough. Released in 1996, the Crossroads quickly became a global phenomenon, spending 8 straight weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It won a Grammy, sold millions of copies, and introduced Bone Thugs and Harmony to audiences far beyond hip-hop. But behind its success was a story built on heartbreak. The original version of the song was inspired by the death of a close friend. Then tragedy struck again when Eazy-E, the group's mentor and the man who believed in them before anyone else, died unexpectedly from complications related to AIDS in March 1995. His death shook the entire hip-hop community. For Bone Thugs, it was deeply personal. Without Eazy-E, there may never have been a Bone Thugs and Harmony. Instead of simply mourning in private, they returned to the studio and transformed the song into something much greater. A tribute not just to one person, but to everyone they had lost along the way. Every verse carries the weight of grief. Not the dramatic kind we see in movies, the quiet kind. The kind that hits weeks later when you instinctively reach for the phone to call someone who isn't there anymore. Producer DJ Unique wrapped those emotions inside gentle melodies and unforgettable harmonies that sounded almost like a church choir. The result was unlike anything hip-hop had heard before. The music video only strengthened its emotional impact. A mysterious angel-like figure moves through the city, guiding souls toward peace, while the surviving members struggle to let go of the people they loved. Number 8. Nas. Dance 2002. Success has a strange way of changing your priorities. When you're chasing your dreams, you imagine that one day everything will finally make sense. But no amount of success can prepare you for losing the person who believed in you before the world ever did. For Nas, that person was his mother. In April 2002, Fannie Ann Jones lost her battle with breast cancer.
All the planets, there's something out there greater, but only God knows.
Nas was on tour when he learned her condition had become critical. He immediately canceled everything and rushed home. He made it just in time. Sitting beside her hospital bed, he watched a single tear roll down her face. Moments later, she was gone. Months later, Nas transformed that grief into one of the most heartfelt songs of his career. Dance isn't built around complicated rhyme schemes or lyrical acrobatics. It doesn't need them. Instead, it sounds like a son having one last conversation with his mother. Throughout the record, Nas imagines sharing one final dance with her. One last smile. One last chance to say everything that always seemed easier to postpone. The pain comes from its simplicity. There's no anger, no blame, only longing.
Gates of heaven opened up for you to stroll through, beautiful Ann Jones.
As listeners, we hear someone discovering one of life's cruelest truths. No matter how successful you become, you can never buy one more moment with someone you've already lost. Nas often spoke about the sacrifices his mother made while raising him and his brother after separating from their father. She worked multiple jobs, kept food on the table.
My hand on your waist, I grab your other hand, I'm trying not to step on your toes.
Believed in her son, even before the world called him one of hip-hop's greatest lyricists. When cancer entered her life, she faced it with remarkable courage. Nas later described her as the bravest person he had ever known. That admiration fills every second of this record. The production remains intentionally understated. Gentle piano chords, warm instrumentation. Nothing competes with the emotion.
You will always live through me. Always.
Number 7. Wu-Tang Clan. Tears 1993. When most people think about the Wu-Tang Clan, they picture gritty street anthems, kung fu samples, razor-sharp lyricism, and 9 MCs competing to have the best verse. But long before Wu-Tang became one of the most influential groups in hip-hop history, they recorded one of its most heartbreaking songs, Tears. Released on Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in 1993, the song showed a side of the clan many listeners had never expected. Not warriors. Not superheroes. Just young men trying to make sense of death. Ghostface Killah opens with a deeply personal story. A close friend is diagnosed with AIDS. At first, there's disbelief. Then denial. Then comes the realization that time is running out.
I was laughing all the time. I taught him all about the bees and birds, but I...
By the time reality fully sets in, it's already too late. His verses don't sound like fiction. They sound like memories. Because they were. The early 1990s were devastating for countless communities. The AIDS epidemic was still surrounded by fear, misinformation, and stigma. People died quietly. Families often suffered in silence. Many were too ashamed or too afraid to even talk about the disease. Wu-Tang refused to ignore it. Then comes RZA's verse. Instead of focusing on illness, he tells another tragic story. Gun violence. A young life taken before it had the chance to become anything more. Different circumstances. Same ending. Another funeral. Another grieving family. Another empty chair. The production is equally unforgettable. Built around Wendy Rena's soulful classic, After Laughter Comes Tears, the beat feels almost spiritual.
I ran frantically, when I dropped down to his feet. I saw
the mournful organ, the slow rhythm, the haunting vocal sample. Everything sounds like walking through a church after everyone else has gone home. What makes Tears remarkable isn't simply its sadness. It's courage.
But I wish I had a chance to sing these 3 words.
At a time when many rappers were expected to project invincibility, Wu-Tang spoke openly about fear, loss, regret.
About to hit skits from this girl named Thelma. Now Thelma had a rep.
Number 6. DMX. Slippin 1998.
Can't get up. Hey, yo, I'm slipping. I'm falling. I can't get up.
By the end of 1998, DMX wasn't just one of the biggest names in hip-hop. He was one of the biggest stars in music. His first 2 albums had both debuted at number 1. His concerts were packed. His voice was unmistakable. His intensity was unmatched. To the outside world, it looked like he had conquered everything. But behind that success, the battles had never stopped. Slippin' isn't simply a song.
She got on some flash, so I split and said that I'ma be that. See,
it's a confession. Over 4 unforgettable minutes, Earl Simmons tells listeners exactly how he became DMX. And it's not a glamorous story. As a child, he endured severe abuse. He spent time in group homes. He slept wherever he could. He searched desperately for love in places that rarely offered any.
hey, damn, was it my fault? Something I did to make a father leave us?
One betrayal changed everything. As a teenager, someone he trusted introduced him to crack cocaine. He believed he was smoking marijuana. He didn't realize his life had been altered forever. That single moment haunted him for decades. Throughout Slippin', X describes a cycle familiar to millions struggling with addiction.
I'm falling. I can't get up. Hey, yo, I'm slipping. I'm falling. I got to.
You promise yourself you'll quit. You stay clean. You begin believing the worst is behind you. Then, you slip. And every relapse feels heavier than the last. The title couldn't be more fitting, because addiction rarely happens all at once. It's gradual. One bad decision. One weak moment. One step backward. Then another. The production mirrors that emotional weight. The piano is restrained. The drums are deliberate. Nothing distracts from DMX's unmistakable voice. Unlike many artists who hide behind metaphors, X tells his story directly. No masks. No filters. Just painful honesty.
I can't get up. I'm slipping. I'm falling. I can't get up.
He speaks about loneliness, self-doubt, childhood trauma, his search for God, his desperate hope that somehow life can still improve. That honesty became even more heartbreaking years later.
I got a video, say to myself that could have been yo.
Number 5. The Notorious B.I.G. Everyday Struggle 1994. Success is supposed to solve your problems. At least, that's what most people believe. Work hard, make money, escape your neighborhood, and everything gets better. But for Christopher Wallace, reality wasn't that simple. Before the platinum records, before the sold-out shows, before becoming one of the greatest rappers to ever touch a microphone, there was simply a young man trying to survive another day in Brooklyn. Released on Ready to Die in 1994, Everyday Struggle isn't about one tragic event. It's about something far more familiar. The constant pressure of simply staying afloat. Bills that never stop coming. People depending on you. Temptations pulling you backward. Dreams that feel just out of reach.
She went to see Poppy to cock me a brick, ask for some cassava.
Biggie doesn't paint himself as a superhero. He sounds exhausted. He's caught between two worlds. One offers honest work that barely pays enough to survive. The other offers fast money, but with consequences that grow heavier every day. It's a decision countless young people have faced. Not because they wanted luxury, because they wanted stability. The production reflects that emotional weight. The slow, murky instrumental feels almost claustrophobic. Like every verse is taking place inside a tiny apartment where hope keeps getting squeezed by reality. Unlike many songs about hustling, Biggie never glamorizes the lifestyle. Instead, he reveals the emotional cost, the paranoia, the guilt, the fear that tomorrow might bring another impossible choice. What makes Everyday Struggle timeless is that it isn't tied to one era. The clothes change, technology changes, neighborhoods change, but pressure remains. Millions of listeners still hear themselves in this song, working 2 jobs, trying to provide for family, wondering whether they'll ever truly get ahead. And number 4, Tupac. Dear Mama 1995. Perhaps the most chilling part comes with hindsight. We read every comment, and your suggestions often inspire future episodes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into hip-hop history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Flash Rewind, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story.